Hello to my fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Welcome to the Taurus new moon. You'll find the timestamps for your rising signs listed below. Hello, Aries Rising. Welcome to your reading for the Taurus new moon happening on Wednesday, the 8th of May at 1:24 p.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So hopefully you'll be watching this right in sync with the event. I apologize for my tardiness. However, I have been luxuriating in all of the Taurian Venusian delights that I can muster at this time. I've really been using the feeling of Venus in Taurus to engage in pleasure as an act of resistance. And that's probably the Uranus part of the story too, that's still in Taurus, the rebel. It has been quite a lovely fortnight. I've got two little baby chihuahuas staring at me. And they've been staring at me for 2 weeks now, constantly. And I've been getting full Nigella in the kitchen and watching Nigella and cooking pasta and lounging and eating the pasta and having naps and washing my hair and quaffing and all of these sorts of things. It's been really beneficial for my mentality when I sometimes can dissociate with external pressure as it builds and builds and builds. And I do not feel that I'm sticking my head in the sand. I feel that I'm giving myself space and grace as Venus in Taurus would want it. So hopefully you can feel that kind of encouragement to enjoy yourself in pockets of time that you're able to. I hope that that's something real for you, Aries Rising. Now, this moon, this Taurus new moon, is something of a seed, a very powerful seed. So I've got the Ace of Pentacles here to just guide us through this reading. This is a grand gesture, a grand offer of potential from the galaxy. In tarot, we talk about pentacles in relationship to Earth, as does Taurus. Taurus is a fixed earth sign, which means it's steady, grounded, reliable, and really involved and interested in pleasure. So looking at your birth chart, if you're an Aries rising, that means that the sign Taurus is in your second house, which is where we think about our money, our coin, our values. And so thinking about the seed of potential right now that we're about to plant, and we'll probably give ourselves about 6 months or so to check the growth on this thing. I want you to think about the revolution that is occurring in the way that you think about your resources, your talent, your self-worth. Think about what has been urging a shift. Think about the last 18 months and all of those eclipses that we had in this place on your chart, this urgency to look at what wasn't working and rectify. Think about that rebellion, that revolution that Uranus is really bringing to this part of you, and get the seed and plant it in the ground. This is the time, if we're going to work with the energy of the moon, we know that at a new moon, we plant. And this is just such an obvious moment to plant something that will sustain you as time goes on. Now, the reason I'm excited about this is because, as I said before, Venus is in Taurus right now. They've been there since the 29th of April, so just the end of this month, after that full moon in Scorpio where we sort of let it all out and let it free. Finally, now we've got another moon that we can trust, but this time that we can activate and we can work with. So Venus is the planet that is the cheerleader for Taurus. Venus loves it in Taurus and in Libra. And so while they're on home base, as it were, while Venus is in the lap of luxury of Taurus and really urging you to get back into the body and start to sort of process some of these emotions away from the mind perhaps and into the body, I want you to whack on the Nigella tapes. I want you to do whatever it is that you need to that gives your body a sense of pleasure, that gives your life a sense of enjoyment, at this new moon, and I want you to really start to think about your coin, your values, your money. What are we planting here at this moon in this week, leading up to the next full moon in Taurus, which will occur later down the track in October sometime. We'll get to it, October or November. Let's write it down. Let's think about it. Write to me in the comments below. Tell me what you would like to see have happen in the place of money, resources, your values. How can you sort of work with or be encouraged by the presence of Venus in this place for you too? So that's on one side of this moon. So the sun and the moon at 18 degrees will form this moment for us, Venus at 10. On the other side, we still have Jupiter, we still have Uranus. So we still have this rebelliousness, we still have this sort of encouragement, this sort of magnifying glass on this part of your chart. Now, Jupiter's been in that same space for nearly a year, and they'll actually leave on May the 26th. So I'll keep you updated about that. But think about your hopes and your aspirations since about May of last year up until now. Think about what Jupiter might have been leaning you towards, or having you further examine. It does feel very rebellious. It does feel a bit revolutionary, perhaps in ways that you're unused to. Perhaps you're looking at different income streams or different ways of resourcing yourself, of taking care of your household. That is maybe a bit shocking to you. It's something that you didn't think you would ever do, but here you are. I can empathize with that. I can very much absolutely identify with that. Had you have told me several years ago that this is my life now, I would have laughed and laughed in your face. Well, that's quite rude. I probably wouldn't have done that, but I would have been like, yeah, oh, great. Rolled my eyes. But here we are. Life rolls and it changes, and we become and become and become as time goes on. We are never the same person. What is that beautiful saying? You can never step in the same river twice, because you're never the same person and it's never the same river. I like that encouragement to evolve. So hopefully this reading can act as a little encouragement for you to evolve too. And maybe feel a little bit of bravery coming back, maybe feel a bit more self-assured in these decisions. When looking at that seed, the Ace of Pentacles, when looking at that as a possibility, I could imagine you'd be like, oh, I'm just not sure. I'd love to, but I'm just not sure if that's available to me. Perhaps you can also feel the comfort and the company of Mars in Aries. So if you're in Aries rising, Mars is the planet that guides you along, and Mars is in Aries right now. Mars is making a slow journey through for the next month or so through Aries, and it's going to be hitting all of these tender spots, these bruises that we've been working with for all of this year. It's going to be looking at the dragon's head, the North Node. It's going to be looking at Chiron. So there's going to be something that might feel like a reacquaintance with your autonomy, with your bravery. I look forward to this for you, Aries rising. I know it's been, well, not harrowing, but it's been a 6 months of note. That's for darned sure. So, and think about it this way too, Mars and Venus are both on home base. They're both in places that they are really great at. They're really good at these places. Mercury is tippy-toeing gently, eventually, its way over and through to Chiron as well. So you remember how Mercury had stationed retrograde in Aries and was sort of going backs and forwards and having us look again and again and again at these tender spots, these pain points for you. Well, there's going to be one more conjunction with Chiron, and then they're going to move through into Taurus soon enough. So I know that it's been a hectic, or maybe if it's not been hectic, it's definitely been dense. But there's been a lot of feelings to feel this past month, especially. And And most of this year, so if we can use the astrology for nothing more than a bit of direction and a bit of encouragement, then let's do that now. Let's do that now. Let's really think about your resourcefulness. Let's think about your relationship with money and the way that your mind works on it's okay if you sometimes think to yourself, you are so inept. I don't know what you're doing with your life. Like, how are you still alive? We all have different ways of thinking about resources. We've all got a different background. We're all taught how to do it. Some of us were, some of us really weren't. Some of us just aren't wired that way. What I do know about our personal resources is that there is a greater sense of movement when we get something running, when we can have a greater handle on that. So it doesn't mean that, I'm encouraging you to be abundant and a millionaire and all that sort of wealth activation stuff. It's not really my style, but I do want for you a sense of autonomy. I do want you to perhaps roll with this feeling of Mars for the next month as well, and sort of bolster your confidence a bit as you approach this stuff. Yeah. So yeah, the rest of this reading is to cheer you on. It's to cheer you on. I think what I can feel is that you're sort of moving from something that really felt needed. There was a big conversation that you had, and it was pragmatic, and it was very facts-based, based in data. Perhaps there was limited sort of emotional connection in this conversation with whoever it was, but you were given the blueprint moving forward. And right now, as we're about to plant this seed, and as we're about to really kind of feel the steam and the motivation of Mars for the next month moving through your sign, I want you to take this little moment as like a rest stop, and I want you to imagine what this might look like. What are you planting? Really kind of visualize it too. If you can write it down, if you can think, okay, so Uma said to me, let's just work with like 6 months. Let's just do really local, small, but let's think, okay, so from here to there, to the next Taurus full moon, what am I planting? And this isn't a get rich quick scheme, but I want you to sort of be open to the possibilities about this, Aries Rising. And then inject yourself with a bit of courage. Yeah, this massive conversation that you had with somebody, and I don't know if it was, it could be like a sort of almost like a financial advisor, but there's definitely someone who's sort of like, right, this isn't working, and I'm going to tell you why. We're sort of moving into tax season too, so there could be something about accounting here. But whatever you've been picking up about, or whatever advice has been offered to you, sometimes it might have felt a bit brusque, like, oh gosh, tell me what you really think. But take it in good faith. It's been offered in good faith, and it's been offered to you so that you can jettison from this point too. I want you to feel confident in terms of money matters. I want you to feel that you're able to regenerate. This is what sort of the garden teaches us, doesn't it? Nature is in abundance if we know the rhythms, if we know the flow of the seasons, if we know how to tend to Mother Nature. So you can sort of maybe in that way, because, and we're sort of going with that sort of feeling in your second house too, there is something fertile about the money matters in your chart. There is something that looks like growth. It looks really sort of classic and like, when you sort of build something, there reaches a point where you can sort of start to see it turn over and start, it's growing in strength. So no matter where you are, financially, Aries rising, even if you're broke at the moment, take this new moon as a trip in the garden. We're planting a little seed here for you, and then as the year progresses, we'll check in on it from time to time, and we'll see how it's growing together. I believe in you, Aries rising. I really do. And it looks to me like you've got some good company, you've got some good advice around you. So rather than swat it away and get sort of angry or get annoyed that someone's trying to tell you what to do, maybe reconsider what this advice that you got pretty recently was in specific terms of your bank balance, your livelihood. Think about that advice, absorb it, learn from it, and use this new moon in Taurus to plant for the future. I love you very much, Aries rising. If you're still here with me, can you please put a bowl of pasta in the comments in honor of Nigella Lawson, who has been cradling me all week as I process some complex emotions myself around money matters. If you're wanting to financially support my work here in Readings Land, you can head to buymeacoffee.com/UmaRuby, and there's an option to subscribe for 10 Australian dollars a month. There's also a tip jar there if you've got some change in your pocket. I'd be very grateful for that. If you'd like me to draw your birth chart and read it to you, we can make an appointment at my website, umaruby.com. They look something like this, and I will guide you through your astrology. I will read the tarot that is in relationship to your chart, and we'll get to know you through this language, through these patterns. If I have read for you before, please come back and have another reading with me. You can choose a truth, growth, love, magic, or femme reading, and that's via the Back for More tab on my website. Much love to you, Aries rising. I look forward to seeing what might grow next for you. Take care. Hello, Leo rising. Welcome to your reading for the Taurus new moon happening very soon on Wednesday, the 8th of May at 1:24 p.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. Please forgive me for my tardiness. I have been lounging. I'll be very honest with you. For the past couple of weeks, I've been in charge of two very adorable little Chihuahua friends of mine, and I've been in the kitchen, clacking around in my slingbacks like Nigella Lawson, cooking pasta, eating it, napping, feeding the dogs, patting the dogs, having a grand old time. I'm encouraged by the presence of Venus in Taurus. So since the end of the month, since April, the end of April, the 29th of April, we've had Venus in their home base. So Venus, the goddess, has arrived back into the garden of Taurus. And so hopefully for the next month or so, you can feel a real encouragement to act on your sensory pleasure zones as perhaps in some way an act of resistance too, because we've got to remember that Uranus is still in Taurus as well. But it's hit me really clearly, and there's been a lot of room for me to feel my feet on the soil, as it were, to feel my feet connected to the earth during these last weeks. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it, in the midst of a lot of other revelation that I've needed to contend with and to process. But that's another story for another time. Taurus is your 10th house. So we're looking at the very top of your chart. We're looking at the place that's probably most visible. So this is where we think about our career and our legacy, Leo rising. If you can feel the encouragement, the urge for you to reacquaint yourself with something that feels like artistry, or that feels like the body, that feels like something related to your pleasure zones, then I would be a cheerleader for that too. If you can look to this next month, from this moon onwards, and remember that Venus is in company with your 10th house, your career, your visibility, and think about the different configurations that will occur over this month too. Venus will trolley past Uranus. There'll be a beautiful moment right before the next full moon where Venus comes into contact, into conjunction with Jupiter. That will be a stunning thing to remember. That's on the 23rd of May. So if you're writing this down, think about that as a beautiful time for you to, if there was something that you needed to sort of press start on, or if there was something that you needed to put out there into the world, the 23rd of May would be the ideal time to do it. Venus and Jupiter in conjunction in Taurus in your 10th house. How stunning. And it probably won't happen for another 12 years. So it's kind of something to just make note of. We're working towards something really beautiful and really bountiful for you, Leo rising. Something that feels like the next chapter, of this grand legacy of your life. In sort of contrast to that, a different flavor, a different taste, perhaps a little bit of heat. There's the sweetness of Venus in Taurus, but now we're getting things spicy. Sorry if I start talking like Nigella. I tend to parrot, and I've been watching her around the clock. She really chills me out. So let's go with this analogy though. With the sweetness, we need some heat, we need some sharpness. So we've got Mars in Aries that is also doing some good work, some valuable work, looking to sort of reestablish some sense of confidence after the sort of bruises that were prodded over this last month or so. Remember that Aries on your birth chart rules the 9th house, which is where we publish, where we expand our mind, and where we learn and travel, okay? So there's something kind of about the grand adventure in Aries for you. And perhaps in relationship to your spirituality, there may have been some moments over this past period of time that we've been really looking at healing sort of things like religious trauma, things like a lack or a loss of faith. I know that that can feel agonizing, Leo rising, to have moments where you're like, I don't know if I believe in fairies anymore. Yeah, that can be so disheartening for magical people, for people that hold on to hope. For them, their hope to falter can be really destabilizing too. So if that has been your experience over the last couple of months, I am with you. But what I'd like to look at with this sort of chilly spice that Mars is bringing back to Aries, Mars is incredible in Aries. So think about it this way: Venus in Taurus, beautifully at home. Mars in Aries, couldn't be happier. So the two personal planets that move fairly quickly are both right now on home base at a time when we really need them most. Eclipse season did what it did. The Scorpio full moon was quite emotionally intense too, I'd wager. So now we're looking to the future. We're looking out, and we're actually probably going to use this moon, the sun and the moon at 18 degrees of Taurus, as a beautiful seed. So if we think about your 10th house as a garden, we think about the soil having been freshly tilled, everything's set and ready to go. So this moment on Wednesday, but for this week, for this month probably actually, as Venus is moving through Taurus, what are you planting in the way that you think about your legacy, your career, your public visibility? You don't have to have a career per se, but there's something about the 10th house that does have folks remember us by. That might be a lovely way to think about it. I think legacy is a really good word for the 10th house. So what from now? It's also quite huge, isn't it? So take it as it lands and take it for what it's worth. There might be something of fatigue, possibly, Leo rising, after all of this revelation, after all of this continual encouragement from the astrology to focus on our wounding. That can sometimes have us feel really exhausted. And so perhaps also in some way, Venus in Taurus is really encouraging you back to the bedroom, back to rest, back to relax. If I'll leave it with how you're feeling at the moment. If all of this kind of like this cajoling kind of feeling with the astrology. If that's becoming too much for you emotionally at the moment, you're so welcome to say, yeah, I'll get to it in a minute. I let myself do that. And I think that something about the structures that we work under as humanity is concerned, something about the sort of continual production and continual work and continual sort of climbing, building, it doesn't leave a great deal of room for rest. I think there's so many folks at the moment that are actually finding it quite difficult to rest because of the pressure that they're under, because of financial or otherwise. There's something that's looking to me with Venus in Taurus as rest and pleasure, as something of an act of resistance too, because Uranus is still in Taurus. So that's probably why I'm saying this. But when the outside world feels like it's closing in on you and the stress hormones rise and the coffee is having your heart beat in your throat and you're sort of drinking so much of it because you're exhausted and you need to get out there and produce and show up and work. Otherwise, you're worried that people will forget about you, or there's a lot of people counting on you. Can you see? It's sort of like, in the face of that, Venus in Taurus is saying, put your slippers on, get back into bed, cook a big pot of pasta, lemon linguine, tip it all into a big bowl and eat it in bed. Give yourself half an hour to chill. Yeah. Let's get you some other tarot and see what else is going on, Leo rising. Some folks might say that sounds like you're sticking your head in the sand. I think that you can probably check in with yourself and know better than anyone if it's avoidance or if it's actually recuperation. I'm a massive advocate for recuperation. Avoidance is when you're numb. So, if it's sort of 12 hours on a rolling screen, that's different, isn't it? To feeling the nourishment that you're providing yourself, tasting the food, smelling the cooking, feeling the warmth of the blanket. That's recuperation. And through stressful times, we get by with pockets of recuperation. The tarot is telling me something else, Leo rising. And I can see, now this character, the devil, has come through for you a couple of times from my memory in the past few readings. And so that's okay. Remember that the devil is not a malevolent force that's out to get us. It's not something that evokes a sense of evil within us. It is a rest stop, because what I know of the devil is that I have to talk with my own demons sometimes when I have been cruel to myself, or when I have been not doing the right thing by my body, by my ethics. And when I look at this card, there is something of an audience that we have with this kind of energy. Our internal world and our history has us speak to ourselves in a certain tone. And if that goes unchecked, that tone, it can get worse and it can get exaggerated. And what I see here, Leo rising, is that we're moving away from something that does feel deceitful. It does feel insincere and inaccurate. Remember, the swords are our mind, our thoughts. So I'll leave that with you. What thought rhythms have you been running over consistently that perhaps are a bit inaccurate, that aren't the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Because what I see here is that this moment right now, just to stop and to absorb it with the devil, to tell them how you've been treating yourself, perhaps tell them how you've been thinking about yourself, or what your mind has been repeating again and again. Because the tarot is saying right here, right now, that it's possibly, there's more to this. There's more to be fleshed out. Inaccurate is what the tarot is saying. And so I wonder, moving forward, because there's another card here that does feel like exhaustion too. There's more of a stoicism. What we're moving towards is something that feels a bit more stoic. It feels a bit grander. There's a chin being held high that I can really feel here, and there is fronting up, showing up again. But that will only happen if we can start to rectify or unpick some of these untruths that you've been telling yourself, because the devil has arrived and you need to tell them. Don't consider it so much as like a confessional, but the devil will just ask questions. The devil will say things like, does that feel good? Is that the truth? So take those questions. You're not a bad person for coping, but it feels to me, Leo rising, that we've reached a point where those coping mechanisms are not helping. They're not doing their work. And the devil will ask again. You can release yourself from that kind of pressure sometimes, Leo rising. So hopefully, as we look to this moment to sow, this moment to plant towards something of a fertile legacy, take this little pocket of time to gently review what you've been telling yourself. Because the stories that we tell ourselves can sometimes turn into grand fables. But there's inaccuracy here. We need to fact check a little bit, I think. That's your reading. Thank you very much for being here with me, Leo rising. I really appreciate your company. If you'd like to send me some tip money, I'd be very appreciative of that. You can do so at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby. There's also an option to subscribe to my channel for 10 Australian dollars a month if you can afford it. If you're still here with me, please put a bowl of pasta in the comments in honor of our patron saint Nigella Lawson, who I love very, very dearly and who's helped me through this Venusian Taurian time. If you would like me to draw up and read your birth chart, they look something like this example here. You can make your appointment with me at umaruby.com. That's my website. If I've not read for you before, pick the spirit reading and we take a journey through your personal astrology with the tarot that is in relationship to that. If I have read for you before, there's an option to choose a truth, growth, love, magic or femme reading. And so we look at the current sky, the current transits, how they're affecting your chart, and then we draw some tarot together and go on a meditative trip. So if that sounds good, head to the back for more tab on my page. Much love to you, Leo rising. It feels like you're doing some good, valuable work and perhaps some much needed review of the inner monologue. So keep going. I encourage that. I'll be with you soon and we'll talk about the Sagittarius full moon, which is coming up next. So much love to you. Take care. Hello Sagittarius Rising, welcome to your reading for the Taurus new moon, happening very soon on Wednesday the 8th of May at 1:24 p.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So in the afternoon on Wednesday, we're getting in there just in time. I want you to, as much as I have just rushed you in the beginning, I think that Taurus wants us to go slow. And I think that Venus wants to go even slower. So since the end of April, Venus has been in Taurus. So we've had this examination, or this sort of grand return of our pleasure principles. Venus in Taurus is in their highest octave. They're of their best help in Taurus and in Libra. And so when we come back to the topics around the planet Venus, we come back to our bodies, we come back to our pleasure activation, we come back to our sensory delights, we come back to the beautiful ritual of eating, the taste of food, the smell of perfume, the wonder of nature. You can see that in tarot, the Empress card is in direct correlation with the planet Venus, and Venus in Taurus is living large. So let's take it slow. On your birth chart, Taurus is the sign that rules your 6th house, which oftentimes can speak to servitude, it can speak to repetition, it can speak to training. It can also speak to your health, your physical well-being. And what I like about this moon is that we can think of it as something of a seed of potential that we can plant. So all of those topics in this current climate, in the current way that life is working out for so many of us, there is a kind of crunchy feeling around repetition and around servitude and around the grind. I know quite a few folks that are feeling a bit past it, or a bit out of puff, out of petrol at present. They're feeling really exhausted. So if we can use the astrology as some really beneficial encouragement to recuperate and to rest and to refuel, that's probably the best kind of seed that I can think of. How is your relationship with your body, Sagittarius Rising? Is it a positive one? I mean, it's there's light and shade there too, isn't there? I know nothing is perpetual. I know that so many of us have a complex relationship with our bodies, checkered. Sometimes great, sometimes could be better. At new moons, we get to hope for the future. So thinking about the way that you would like to relate to your body, thinking about the way that you would like to relate to your health, thinking about what your physicality needs in order to maintain, in order to keep going, but also looking at the rhythms, the structures, the containers of your life, and seeing which ones can stay and which ones need to go might be a really great way to work with this moon too. Venus has entered the sign Taurus since the end of last month. So after that full moon in Scorpio, where we let more cats out of the bag, then we move into Venus in Taurus. And so it's only going to be a month or so. We know Venus moves fairly quickly. In fact, they'll leave probably on, just the day after the next full moon. So it's in and out really quick, but also a great invitation to get back in touch with the physical self. I'm kind of really leaning on this sort of physical self vibe, Sagittarius Rising, because that's the 6th house, you know. I've been doing so much intentional stillness lately, and I've been really trying to listen to my body rather than sort of drown it out or numb it out. I've been doing a lot of body scanning and to find where the anxiety comes. Sometimes it's here, sometimes it's here, sometimes it's here. But I know this now. For the longest time in my life, I was becoming a bit of a hunchback, and I used to just seize up and find the most comfortable position because to cope, That was my idea of maintaining. But Taurus is probably not really interested in that, and Venus definitely not. So let's rewrite this if we can. If you're the kind of person that perhaps does get into a bit of a sort of like mode, because we've got to maintain, we've got to keep the eyes on the prize, or we've got to keep going. What I'd love for you to do, if at all possible, is to use this next month to circuit break. And the best ways that I can think about doing that, the best ways that have really helped me, has been to get my nigella on, get into the kitchen, get into the rhythmic, repetitious act of chopping vegetables, of making food, and then committing to following through and actually eating it too. I've got, sometimes can have a very difficult relationship hearing what my body needs, and that's been with me since I was a teenager, and I'm working on that. It's an active relationship that I'm working on. So sometimes it takes a little extra effort, is what I'm saying, perhaps to nourish the body in the ways that you know that it needs, perhaps in providing yourself with the salve or with the soothing, gentle hand that you so deserve as well. So that's part of the astrology, and that's something that I'd really like you to sort of like ruminate in and sort of envelop yourself in, is that this astrology is saying radical self-care. We've got Venus in Taurus. We also still have Uranus, so that rebel spirit is still with us, and so is Jupiter. In fact, this moon is pretty flanked by a contingent of pretty awesome characters. I've just got an image of it's quite cliche, but of John Lennon and Yoko Ono in bed, and that image of a certain time, but in response to the outside world. And obviously it can be read as an exorbitant example of privilege, but the sentiment is something that rings true. I think so many of us are being called to activate our pleasure centers as some sort of act of resistance, because I feel the tension so sincerely. I feel the pain so sincerely. And if you're a sensitive person, if you're an empathetic person, you're with me on this. I feel the hermit rising within me too. My agoraphobia is at a point that I'm willing to work with, I'm willing to work on, but I am checking it, I am registering it. Remember that time alone is required and is very much needed. Also remember that hiding can be damaging too. If you're clammed up and by the door listening for danger, or if you're laying flat on your back but just absorbing every single headline that you possibly can, and getting more and more and more anxious, and your jaw clenches up, and you've not been to fix yourself something to eat, you've been drinking coffee all day long, you can see that like there's different ways to recuperate, and those aren't one of them. I completely get it that the impulse to hide, the impulse to self-sabotage as well when thinking about our relationship with our bodies, whether that be putting something that we know is not good for it into it, or ignoring our ignoring our needs, ignoring what the body needs. There's something of a complex thing that so many of us do, little microaggressions to the self, like denial. When life feels chaotic, there are only so many things that we have control over. And so sometimes nourishment is very controlled. So if that's what you've been experiencing too, Sagittarius rising, this is another encouragement for you to feel Venus in Taurus and feel Nigella in the kitchen, feel the beautiful sensuality of humanity as much as you're able to. The sixth house is a grind. The sixth house is repetitious. Sometimes you can probably think about the room in the house, the kitchen, as being a bit repetitious or a bit of a grind. I get that. There's also something in that rhythm, something in that repetition that can really ground you and bring you back to earth. And this is what Taurus would love to have happen. So that's just my advice, just looking at your birth chart. For the rest of the month, Venus is going to be making relationships with the other planets in Taurus too, leading up to a beautiful moment right before the Sagittarius full moon that has Venus and Jupiter come together. So we're kind of moving to a bit of a place of crescendo for you too, Sagittarius rising. Remember, the next full moon, the next lunation, will be in your first house. So we're going to feel a great upswell and a great release there too. If any of this helps, know that what I know is that these attitudes or these perceptions of ourselves can compound because, let me get there, by lack of nourishment, lack of embodiment, lack of care, self-care, the mind can do such a peculiar thing where it starts to then add another layer of admonishment to your self-perception about that ineptitude too. Like you can't even eat, you can't even cook yourself a meal, you moron. You know, that's what it can start to. It can get so distorted in the mind. I understand that sort of inability to sort of go and brush the teeth too, or cleanse the body sometimes. And that adds another layer of that admonishment, you pig. In these moments, Sagittarius rising, I hope that you can remember, if it ever happens for you again, it might not be something that you have experienced so sincerely. If you have, hopefully the next time that you are in that mentality or you're in that place again where the internal workings, the inner monologues are really not in your favor once more, and you're starting to admonish yourself for all of your failings, I'd like for you to remember me in this present moment, telling you that you're not alone in that. I sincerely identify with that difficulty. My advice is that we sometimes can use the sixth house in that repetition to push through that initial wall of self-hate, and we find ourselves in the duty of the repetition. I'm thinking about just chopping an onion as an example. Don't have to eat it now, but you're chopping it up and you're putting it in the pan. You're stirring it. You're filling up the kitchen with an aroma. Now grab the garlic. You don't have to eat it at the moment. You're making a sauce. So we're going to slow cook this thing. You need some celery. You need a carrot. You need a can of tomatoes. Go and get them from the cupboard. That's the great thing about making a sauce, is you cook it really slowly. So you don't have to eat it now. But rather than staring at the wall, we need to activate this repetition for you. The best sauce as well, carrot, celery, onion in the pan first. Chop it really finely, cook it really on low. Don't color it, just get it really soft. It's called a sofrito, it's Italian. I'm going to get you some tarot before we go. It's palpable. The pressure from outside, it's tense, tight like a drum. I completely get it, Sagittarius rising. This moon, this encouragement from Taurus is something of a strategy to cope as well. The sixth house often has us find ways to cope when the going gets tough. So if this is the seed that we're planting, when we think about our relationship with our body, with our health, we think about the repetition that is required in this life. We think about acts of service, and we think about technique. There's someone in your neighborhood, in your life, that is raring to go and perhaps can help you get some of this off the ground if it's been a little bit tetchy or it's a bit stiff. There's someone in your life that is really adept and has a lot of great skills that they were kind of raised on as well. They might feel wiser than their years in some parts of life. Perhaps where you lack a little bit, they're really good, and they've got strategies. They're wanting to help you with this. Because as I tell you the story about my coping mechanisms, and as I tell you the story about my reaction to the tense nature of the current climate, what I can see in the tarot is that there is a possibility, there is a worry that we might be driving into the skid a little bit as far as anxiety is concerned, as far as repetitious thought, and as far as stress responses too. So if that's where we're about to drive into, name this person for yourself, name this compatriot, this friend, this family member, whoever it might be, and now is the time to ask for help. Now is the time to work together. If that's organizing some sort of rhythm, routine in your diet, as far as regular meals, if that's something to do with rolling up the sleeves and getting the start on this hard work, that's something to look at as well. Something felt fated. And what I'm kind of picking up with these cards, Sagittarius Rising, is that perhaps you're second guessing yourself at the authenticity of this new era. Perhaps something feels a bit too good to be true, or perhaps there was a leap of faith that you took that you're now really second guessing, and you're wanting to jump back into the self-effacing side of your nature. Well, I know that feeling too. I know what it feels like to hope and wish and pray and wonder, and then get something that feels like an offer or feels like a possibility, and then for that side of yourself to be like, you are in way over your head, you don't know what you're doing. Look around you, look at what needs to be done here, look at life in this current moment. Why are you wasting your time thinking about this? Of all things, is that a contribution? No, it's not. There are bigger fish to fry. Can you see how sort of one starts to go and go and go and go and go? I want the best for you, Sagittarius Rising, and I think that you've got so much to offer, and I'm really excited about this turn of the wheel for you. What I would love to do is use this Taurus new moon as a really deep moment of commitment to self. Self-care is a brand now. But we know the true definition of that, don't we? We know that the body needs nourishment. We know the body needs exercise. We know the body needs sunshine. So if it's been a little while too that you've not been outside because of that sort of agoraphobia that I was describing before, of which I completely identify. As I said, I have limits, and I also check myself and check my body as to see where the anxiety is coming from when I am confronted with that sort of agoraphobic feeling. We're moving all together, Sagittarius Rising. We're on this ride together. You have my full support, and it really does seem that you've got someone very close by that is ready to engage with you on this, ready to sort of pick up where you can't right now. Last thing I'll say before we go is that Mars is in Aries too. So thinking back to your 5th house, your sense of creativity and self-expression, this is possibly where that wheel of fortune has turned and now you don't believe it. Mars is in this place for you. Mars is the guiding light for Aries. So be brave. All the pain, the bruises that we've bumped up against, that we've looked at, that wounding that we've had to unearth about your confidence in your self-expression is reaching a point where there's something like bravery coming on down the bend. So activate it. Eat. Make a sauce. It smells really great. Big love to you, Sagittarius Rising. If you're still here with me, put a big bowl of pasta in the comments, please, in honor of Nigella and Taurus and Venus and all of that good stuff. If you have the money, I would really appreciate some financial support. So you can tip me at buymeacoffee.com/UmaRuby. There is also an option to subscribe for 10 Australian dollars a month. If that's affordable for you, I completely understand the frustration, though, of how many subscriptions we are responsible for these days. However, if you're really enjoying my work and you'd like to support it, that's the easiest way to do so. If you'd like to book a reading with me, I draw your birth chart that looks something like this. And I take you on a journey through your astrology, the tarot that's in direct relationship to your astrology, and we have an hour-and-a-half conversation about you in terms of the galaxy. So pick the spirit reading if I've not met you before. If I have met you before and you'd like another reading, we can organize a truth, love, growth, magic, or femme reading. And in those readings, we look at the current sky, the current transits, how that's affecting your astrology, and we pull some tarot together. And I read for you from the cards that you've selected. So think about those titles, think about what topics or what ideas they might bring up for you. If you wanted to speak about magic, truth, love, growth, or your femininity, then drop me a line. I'll be with you for the Sagittarius full moon. So that's on the 23rd of May. So let's see how my schedule goes after all of my pasta meals. But thank you very much for your company, Sagittarius Rising. I adore you. Speak to you very soon.